Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
The following is a presentation of News Radio KMAN, your home for high school sports. This is Scoreboard Saturday on News Radio KMAN.
Good morning. Boy, it's great to be with you again on this Saturday morning of Scoreboard Saturday, News Radio KMAN. Final week of the regular season coming up next week. Then we have playoffs coming up in a couple of weeks. So this week was quite a big deal for teams that wanted to get into the postseason. Teams that are looking to establish their seeds within the postseason. Particularly the Wamego Red Raiders, who are seeking that number one seed in 4A West. Also the Manhattan Indians, who were looking for a share of the Centennial League title. So a lot of games last night played a big role into what we were trying to figure out where the postseason's going to be over the next few weeks. So, without further ado, we'll get into Manhattan in just a moment. Of course, welcome to Scoreboard Saturday on News Radio KMAN. Of course, this show brought to you by the great folks over at WTC Communications. WTC, keeping you connected with the fastest fiber network internet speeds. Get your home or business in the game online at WTCKS.com. That's WTCKS.com. We start with the Manhattan Indians as we do every single week. On the road for the final time in the regular season last night as they headed to Topeka High, who has been a surprise this season in Centennial League play. Started 4-0, but they've lost their last two. Could Manhattan make it 7 straight wins and a possibility of taking the Centennial League title? What did Mitch Fortner?
Last night at Homer Sports Park, Manhattan High rolls into the capital city and spoils the Trojan senior night. All Tribe, their third shutout in the last 4 weeks. They knock off Topeka High in league play. Final score, 52-0. Mitch Fortner alongside Cole Dutchendorf. And once again, Cole, numbers of course, major way in favor of Manhattan.
Yeah, 355 total yards for Manhattan last night. Kamario Davis, he had 13 carries for 41 yards and 2 scores on the ground. Carter Aslan, 2 rushes, 55 yards and 1 touchdown. E.J. Massenberg, 2 carries, 21 yards and a touchdown. Jaden Hudley only touched the ball 4 times, put it in the end zone twice, had 86 yards on the ground. Total on the ground for the team, 27 carries, 213 yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns. Carter Aslan through the air, very efficient night for the senior quarterback. 6 for 10, 114 yards, and 1 touchdown. Ben Watson, the backup, was 3 for 4 for 28 yards through the air. Gabe Summerlin had 3 catches, for 47 yards. J.J. Dunnigan added 1 catch for 38 yards. Jaden Hudley had the 1 catch for 16 yards and the touchdown. Kamario Davis added a couple of catches as well. And then Hunter Austin in that second half, 1 catch for 34 yards. Again, total yardage, 355 in favor of the Indians. And then for Topeka High, didn't get a ton of yards on the evening. It was only 81 total, 49 on the ground. It was Zane Smith who got a bulk of that damage done. 3 carries, 33 yards. Devontae Ewing had 11 carries for 22 yards, just 2 yards per carry. Manhattan totally shutting down the entire offense for Topeka High. Jaden Norman had 1 carry for 4 yards and then a loss of 8. Again, that's 17 carries for 49 yards. Through the air, Zane Smith, the quarterback, started 4 for 8, then failed to make a completion in his last 7 throws. 4 for 15 for 32 yards. 3 of those completions went to Saron Carter for 30 yards, and then it was Devontae Ewing who had 1 catch for 2 yards. Total yards for Topeka High, 81. Again, 355 for Manhattan and 6 rushing touchdowns.
Big note for Manhattan senior quarterback and captain Carter Aslan with his passing yards tonight. He now passes for over 2,000 in his career, so a big career note there for the QB for the MHS Indians, Carter Aslan. And with this blowout, shutout victory over the T-High Trojans, Manhattan now improves to 7-0, 3-0 in Centennial League play. T-High ends league play 1-3. They're now 4-3 overall, losing their last 3 games. Now, as we record this, Junction City and Washburn Rural are still playing. With a Rural loss and a Manhattan win, the Indians earn at least a share of a Centennial League championship, would be the 34th league championship in Manhattan football history. But they want that outright title. That shot is this coming Friday at Bishop Stadium to wrap up the regular season when they take on the Washburn Rural Junior Blues for a 7 o'clock kickoff and pregame at 6:30. Last night, the Indians get it done in impressive fashion. Another shutout. They beat Topeka High 52-0 in Topeka. For Cole Dutchendorf, I'm Mitch Fortner for Scoreboard Saturday.
Apologies for that being really quiet. I tried to get that fixed this morning, but I just couldn't get it done. So apologies if that was a little too quiet. I tried to jack it up as high as I could. Thanks again, of course, to the fellows, Mitch and Cole, and they'll have it for you next week here on News Radio KMAN beginning at 6:30 on Friday with kick at 7 o'clock. Mitch and Toby Hamas from the Mercury also meeting with Coach Joe Schartz following the game.
I'll kick things off. Just can you walk us through the team's performance tonight? Obviously, it's a dominant showcase. Just take me through what you saw.
Well, it's kind of hard to remember. It went real fast, and I was pleased with the offensive line, and we were able to throw the ball a little bit tonight, which we haven't been able to do the last couple weeks, and so there's some things that we need to continue to clean up. But then defensively, we got another shutout, so team's playing really well.
Yeah, that was my next question. Just the defense, 3 shutouts on the year. How impressed have you been with that group?
Real impressed, because I tell you, some of those other games that we played, you talk about like Lawrence Free State and even Wichita Northwest, we're just a couple plays away from being very, very dominant in those games too. So the defense is playing lights out, and one of the kids that we got back tonight was Logan Lagerman, and it's nice to have him back. He looks good out there.
In the locker room, have the guys already kind of turned the page towards Washburn, feels like?
Yeah, we did. We broke it down tonight, leaving the locker room with, beat rule, and that's what we got to do. We need to get in the film room tomorrow and clean up some mistakes, because there are some, and need to continue to work to get better, but, it's on to Rule now.
Do you feel like there's going to be a sense of vengeance with the group, knowing what happened last year against Rule?
Well, it's just Washburn Rule, these kids, youth sports, they grow up and playing against them in, football, basketball, and baseball, and it seems like, all the way through the middle school too, Rule gives us the most competition, and so these kids, they all know one another, and it's a big game for sure.
Last I checked, as we record this, it was fourth quarter and Junction City was leading Washburn Rural 17-0. That means you would earn at least a share of the league championship. So is that something you bring up to the guys that, okay, you officially have a league championship, but you got that outright opportunity on Friday?
Yeah, that's nice. And, you just look back the last few years, Rural has always struggled with Junction City, and Junction City always gives them a good game. But next week's a completely different matchup. It's Manhattan versus Rural, and we got a lot of work to do because Rural's a very good football team.
All right, I'm good. Thank you, Coach.
All right.
Joe Schartz following the game last night. Manhattan, of course, moving to 7-0 overall, and they get a share of the Centennial League title. It's early for me, which is funny because we got home pretty early last night. I blame that on me. I stayed up a little too late. Manhattan also 7-0 in district play. Centennial League play, of course, ends for them tomorrow evening. For Topeka High, they are done in Centennial League play. They have a non-league contest next week with Pittsburgh. And Topeka High, yes, it's been an improvement in Season 1 under Jason Philbeck. Did very well to start the season against the Wichita teams in Wichita West, Wichita Heights, Wichita Southeast. They beat Emporia, but 3 straight losses, bad losses too. Lost by 28 to Washburn Rural, 29 to Junction City, and by 52 to Manhattan. But you got to give Jason Philbeck credit. They've definitely turned things around here in his first year at the helm. Junction City, of course, we've talked about them, and they've started to play a little bit better after 4 straight losses. They take down Washburn Rural, as Coach mentioned in that clip. They always give Washburn Rural a good ball game. 17-0 shutout win for Randall Zimmerman's team last night, and they'll wrap up their regular season with a Centennial League battle on the road at Emporia next week. And being that Emporia has not had a great season, have to think Junction City might be in a pretty good position. And speaking of the Spartans, they're 0-7 now. They lose it by a final of 49-7 last night in a non-league game with Spring Hill. Emporia now, dating back to the start of the 2023 season, have lost 16 consecutive games and losers of 17 straight dating back to the end of the 2022 season. So far, if you look at Caden Glinsman's record as head coach, he's 0-16 as a head coach in his career at Emporia. So things not looking great for the Spartans at this juncture. Topeka Hayden, of course, the lone team in Centennial League play that doesn't play any league games because they're 3A. They go to 6-1. They take down Perry Lecompton last night in a 50-16 final after beating Holton last week 31-7, and Holton is Bill Arnold's alumnus. He went there for high school. They have a regular season finale with a Jeff West team who right now is struggling. Jeff West has had a very rough season, but they did pick up their first win of the year last night. David Bowen's team takes down Atchison County in a non-league, non-district title, non-district battle, 29-6. But that's going to be a tough game for them at home next week as they take on Topeka Hayden in that one. Coming up next, we head out to the NCKL. We'll talk with Weston Moody and Marc Henry from Wamego and Clay Center. That was our area game of the week last night. Also get you a look at 4A West, the tight battle that is for the top seed over in 4A West. That's all coming your way next on Scoreboard Saturday, powered by WTC Communications. Of course, you can hear Dave Ramsey, that is, weekdays from 10 to 1. That's Tuesday through Thursday. Mondays, 11 to 1, as we have the GMCF Community Hour with Dave Lewis and Vern Hendricks here on News Radio KMAN. And then Blueville's Horticulture Hints on Fridays with myself and Dan Russell. Sometimes Derek DeBoe joins us from Blueville Nursery. Welcome back to Scoreboard Saturday, News Radio KMAN. On this Saturday morning, I'm A.J. Shaw with you. We just drove you through the Centennial League. Of course, if you miss any of the show, you can check out our podcast, Scoreboard Saturday on 1350 KMAN. You get that wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find Within Reason with Mike Matson, our new show that started Monday. Mike met with Governor Laura Kelly for the full hour Monday. Yusha Reddy and Brad Starnes, candidates for the 22nd Senate District Tuesday. Met with Ned Seaton, who's the publisher of the Manhattan Mercury Wednesday. Angel Roser and Kim Zito, who are candidates for House District 67 Thursday. And then met with Jim Jeanette and John Armburst yesterday. Jim, the president of Manhattan Area Technical College. John is the former head of the Governor's Military Council. He's now part of her economic development team, and very important conversations. You can also check out Mike's show on our YouTube page at News Radio KMAN, and that podcast will also be up there as well for this show, for the game, for our K-Man 5-Minute Morning Show with news updates from myself and sports from Troy Coverdale. So, yeah, a lot of great places to go check us out. If you ever miss a show live or you need to get your latest headlines, we got you covered. And definitely check out Mike's new show if you haven't. It's a very wide-ranging show where lots of great topics are discussed, and especially as we get into election season, getting to hear what the candidates have to say. So definitely go ahead and check out those episodes. And make sure to check out the first episode with Governor Laura Kelly. We now get you into the NCKL. Last night, our area game of the week between Wamego and Clay Center. Third time we're getting an opportunity to see the Red Raiders. Second time we're getting to see Clay Center. We saw them a couple of weeks ago in Flush against Rock Creek when they were shut out. Clay Center battling a lot of injuries, to say the least. They were down their quarterback, their starting quarterback, Cole Platson, one of their top receivers in Jace Weller. Colton Tadman got the start at quarterback last night. But Wamego, the game came down to the run game. Very windy game last night. Actually, it's right in front of me. I apologize. I thought I had it over there. Came down to the play of their running back last night, Tate Warren. Warren in total, 257 yards. I say 260 in the interview because, let's be honest, I completely blanked and forgot for a second. 257 yards in the ball game for Tate Warren. They ran the ball so much last night, Wamego, and I made the comment on the air to Troy. I was writing in the margins. I did, in fact, actually use the last sheet of paper. Drew Erickson had 2 yards in that game. But really, I mean, not a lot of throwing last night. In fact, Logan Fulton, the quarterback, completed 2 of 6 passes. And I made the comment, I said to Troy after I came back up to the booth following post-game, and I interviewed Coach Moody and Coach Henry, I said, who'd you give player of the game to? Made a lot of sense to give it to Tate Warren last night. He was pretty darn impressive. And that was my first comment I made to Coach Weston Moody following the game.
So I am not a math expert, I will say that right off the bat, but 260-plus yards for Tate Warren tonight. Pretty special outing from him.
Yeah, we put the ball in his hands and put a lot on his shoulders and asked him to do, hey, you're gonna get the ball a lot tonight, and he decided that he was going to take advantage of that.
How much credit does your offensive line have to get for this performance as well?
Well, yeah, they can't do it, without those guys. And we lined up in some heavy sets, and our tight end Hayden McCarthy had a hell of a game too as well. We were moving him around a lot, and so him and the offensive line, they paved the way all night long.
Defensively, another great performance for you guys. You only hold them to 12 points, and you guys now sit at 6-1. Put yourselves in a pretty good position to potentially get the 1 seed in the 4A West.
Yeah, I would say that our defense was not as good as usual, and I bet they're pretty mad at themselves. They let them have too long of drives, and that's, I think, one of their strategies was to hold the ball and keep it away from us, and that's why it was pretty close at half. So I would guess that they're not very happy with their performance, so hopefully we can be better next week.
Logan Fulton had to battle some injuries, but he was able to play for you tonight. Didn't have a great passing game, but still, though, to put in that effort to come out there, even with some of the injuries he was dealing with, is pretty impressive, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's banged up like everybody, and so it was good to have him out there, and he's worked really hard to get back throughout the week, so we're happy to have him back.
Tell me a little about hits for Hank.
Childhood cancer, Hank Hartwick. He's a kid in the community that passed away recently and had cancer, and we wanted to kind of show out our support for the family and for him, and he was a big football kid, and I remember seeing him on the sideline last year, and so we really wanted to show out, and I feel like the fans did tonight, and this is obviously something to raise funds for awareness and for his fund, so it was fun. It was a fun night, and I'm glad we got the win.
That was a really important thing that I wanted to bring up, the hits for Hank, which they were doing a fundraiser last night for childhood cancer, and Hank Hartwick, they honored him before the ball game. Very important thing, and hopefully folks who were out at the game last night were able to donate to that. So I figured I would bring that up with Coach, and really glad that he was able to talk about that, and that's a very important thing for sure. Hate to see that, and obviously we send our thoughts to the family of Hank Hartwick. Childhood cancer in general is just an absolute terror, and we have to find a way to stop it, especially when it comes to children. So really important fundraiser last night, and really glad that folks were able to turn out for that and support it. Also had a chance to talk with Clay Center head coach Marc Henry following the ball game.
How much did the wind affect your guys' passing game tonight?
I don't think it affected a lot. Our game plan kind of coming in was to ground and pound a little bit, and and so we weren't really planning on throwing the ball much.
You did have a long drive before halftime. 18 plays. You guys killed nearly 10 minutes of time off the clock. Even in the loss, you still got to be impressed with the execution on that drive by your team.
I'm super proud of my guys. I mean, to come in with the injuries and being shorthanded and to compete with a team like Wamego that's a top-notch team in 4A. I'm proud of those guys, and we did some nice things, but, obviously always room to improve.
Your next week, your last game, you were talking a little bit about your team. Next week is your last game with Marysville. Last home game for a lot of those kids. What's kind of the message that you're telling them as you head into next week?
The message was if we win that game, we'll be at home. We'll actually host a Week 9 playoff game, and you got a group of seniors, a great group of seniors, and you always talk about that as, time is something that you can't stop and you can never get back, and so you just have to make the most of the time that you have, the time that's left, whatever it is, and just enjoy it, bust your ass, and no regrets.
Appreciate Coach Henry right there. Great guy. Great to talk to him, and got to talk with Coach Moody as well. Two great coaches, and yeah. Clay Center moves to 3-4 on the season, and I really want to thank Troy for giving me this because right now there's a big battle for that number 1 spot in 5A West. So, excuse me for just 1 second. Let me get my bearings really quickly. There are currently entering last night 5 teams that are battling for that number 1 spot. Andover Central, Wamego, Mulvane, Cape and Mount Carmel. Those are, pardon me, I cannot do math today. 4 teams. I told you I'm not good at math. I was not a good math student growing up. Better English and history student. Andover Central, Wamego, Mulvane, Wichita, which is Cape and Mount Carmel. All 5-1 teams. You also have 3 teams that are 4-2. Wellington, Winfield, and Buhler. Wamego's beaten Buhler. Wamego has not played Mulvane. They've not played Cape and Mount Carmel. They've not played Andover Central yet. If you, of course, remember Andover Central, that's the team Wamego's played 3 years in a row in postseason play. Wamego beat them in 22. Andover Central beat them in 21 and 23. That number 1 spot is definitely up for discussion, and we're going to get into more of that next segment on the difference and where we're going to be seeing on those teams. Cape and Mount Carmel got beat last night. They were beaten by a St. James Academy team who's 2-4, but they have such a tough schedule, and they're a tough team to beat. The toughest schedule of them all definitely has to be Andover Central. They played an unbeaten Goddard Eisenhower team last night. Then they have Andover in an intercity battle next week. Wamego's got a pretty easy ride to get to it because they beat Clay Center, and then they have a 3-4 Abilene team. Wellington, they're playing a 1-5 Rose Hill team and an 0-6 El Dorado team. Meanwhile, Winfield, who's 4-2, they played Buhler and they played Mulvane. We'll get into that more next segment. We'll also get you out to the Big East League and look at some of the scores and standings and get you a quick look at our media poll. But a lot to discuss as we look at the postseason situation. Who's going to get that number 1 spot in 4A West? We'll have that conversation for you coming up next here on Scoreboard Saturday, powered by WTC Communications. Just remembered that I didn't get to the rest of the NCKL scores because we got really dived into the 4A rankings for 4A West, but we will get at that really quickly. Again, I mentioned there are 3 teams, or really 4 teams, that are battling for that 6-1 spot and that top spot in 4A West. By the way, welcome back to Scoreboard Saturday. News Radio KMAN. I'm AJ Shaw. Of course, our show brought to you by WTC Communications. WTC keeping you connected with the fastest fiber network internet speeds. Get your home or business in the game online at WTCKS.com. That's WTCKS.com. Wamego, of course, winners last night. We mentioned Mulvane and Andover Central. Those are 2 other teams that are really battling for it. They beat a Coffeyville team 44-28 last night, and they have a contest with Winfield next week. Meanwhile, Andover Central, they picked up a win as well over Goddard Eisenhower, who came in unbeaten to that game. Derek Tuttle's Jaguars take down Goddard Eisenhower 27-26. They take on Andover next week. So 3 teams currently are sitting at the top in 4A West. There is a possibility that we see 3 teams sitting at 7-1. But right now, Wamego, by the point spread, they have a +4 on Mulvane. Whoever finishes with the most points, if we have a three-way tie, would get that top spot in 4A West. Wellington, Buhler, and Cape and Mount Carmel. Cape and Mount Carmel, as I mentioned, lost last night in a tilt with St. James Academy. St. James Academy is a team out of 5A. They're a very good team. They lost to them 30-10. So Cape and Mount Carmel, the Crusaders, currently they fall back a little bit, and they sit themselves in a pretty difficult situation. So Wamego, because they have the point spread average by average of victory, they currently hold that top spot in 4A West. Again, I mentioned it on the broadcast last night. If you were listening over on B1047, they control their own destiny right now in a sense, but they cannot worry about what other teams have to do. Again, Wamego has a ball game with Abilene next week, so hopefully for them they could pull out that victory. Speaking of the Cowboys of Abilene High School, Brad Nix's team snaps a 3-game losing streak. They take down El Dorado last night, 38-7. El Dorado's now lost 17 in a row, dating back to the end of 2022. And again, as I mentioned, they play the Cowboys next Friday evening. I'm not sure why I said Monday. Next Friday evening. Shane Seben's Rock Creek Mustangs moving to 6-1. They take down Concordia in a 42-0 victory. They're sitting at 3-0 in district play and 4-1 in league play. And next week, they'll be at home against Chapman. And we'll have that game for you, our B1047 Carpet One of Manhattan area game of the week. Myself and Troy Coverdale will have it for you from Flush, Rock Creek High School, as they take on Chapman. Rock Creek has a chance to take home the NCKL title because they own the tiebreaker over Marysville. Speaking of Marysville, the Bulldogs, sitting at 4-1 in league play. They take down Chapman in a 50-8 tilt last night, and they'll wrap up the regular season next week at Clay Center. Good possibility that we could see a couple teams take home a share of that title. We mentioned, and that's, of course, the NCKL. But, yeah, 3 teams at the top sitting at 4-1 and 6-1 overall. Rock Creek's got the tiebreaker over Marysville. Marysville, the tiebreaker over Wamego in head-to-head matchups. But, again, keep an eye on 4A West. Keep an eye on it. We'll definitely look at it again next week. But again, Wamego, Mulvane, Andover Central, those 3 teams currently at the top. Wamego has the most average point victory by half a point, technically speaking, if you look at it overall. So right now, they hold that tiebreaker over Mulvane and Andover Central for that top spot. Keep an eye on it. It's important. Keep an eye on it. It's going to be definitely a thing to keep an eye on when you are looking at postseason play. And, of course, next week our show will mainly be dedicated to looking at the postseason matchups, particularly for our area teams and other teams across the state, as postseason just a couple weeks away, starting the 1st of November. And it's crazy to think that we're almost into the month of November. That's how quick things have moved here in 2024. We now head over to the Big East League here. Things are not looking so great right now for Eric Williman's Riley County Falcons. They've dropped 2 straight, but they've had a real tough schedule over the last few weeks. Lost to Silver Lake last week. They get shut out by a very solid Heston team last night. And now Eric Williman's team has a below 500 record in district play. 1-2 on the season, and things don't get much easier for them next week as they wrap up their regular season with a home tilt against Osage City. We talked about it early in the season. Riley County had some big wins over Holton, over Chapman, over St. Mary's in overtime. But the last 2 weeks have been tough district battles for them, and currently right now not sitting in a good position district-wise. A little bit better in league play at 3-1, but again, they sit a full game back of top Nemaha Central, who currently holds the district lead. After losing that first game of the season to Marysville, the Thunder have railed off 6 straight wins. They beat Royal Valley by a 40-16 score last night, as Nemaha Central now sits at 6-1, 3-0 in district play, 4-0 in Big East League play, and they have a road tilt with Atchison County next weekend on the road. Silver Lake last night, Logan Pegram's team picks up their second loss of the season. They lose to Osage City in a very good ball game. A 35-21 loss for Logan Pegram's team, who drops their first contest in district play and league play. Excuse me, that was a district loss, not a league loss. They have Council Grove at home next week to wrap up the regular season. Holton things not looking so great for the Wildcats right now at 3-3, but Brooks Barda's team does pick up a much-needed win over a Hiawatha team that has struggled this season in Wyatt Giroux's first season at the helm. 35-14, and Brooks Barda's team has a home tilt with Leavenworth next week to wrap up the regular season. 4-3 overall, 3-1 in district play, 4-2 in Big East League play. Sabetha looking to respond, of course, from a loss last week to Nemaha Central in a rivalry game that's about as intense as Green Bay versus the Bears. Well, that rivalry's not as intense anymore. Oh, man, I brought up bad memories as a Bears fan there. Anyways, Sabetha responding against Oskaloosa last night with a 49-6 victory. Caleb Muller's team going to 5-2 overall, 3-1 in district play now, 3-2 in Big East League play, and they have St. Mary's, the Bears, on their docket next week. And speaking of those Bears, they snap a 3-game skid, beating Council Grove by a 22-6 win. Their first win in district play last night. But those 3 losses, middle of the season, all one-score losses. Losing to Silver Lake, losing to Riley County in overtime, and losing to Osage City. That's going to be a very big knock on them as they head into the postseason, especially after they started 3-0. I mean, they beat Rossville 24-16. Speaking of Rossville, they've responded very well after they lost their first 3 games. They're 0-3 in league play, folks, but they're 4-0 in district play. And they've been playing really well since they got into district play. They shut out Opie last night, 28-0. They have a road contest with Wabaunsee next week. And really, Derek Hamas's team has responded solidly after that start to the season that was very, very surprising for them, to say the least. Topeka Hayden, we mentioned them earlier, beat Perry Lecompton last night. Mike Paramore's team now 2-5 on the season. Jeff West got their first win. Hiawatha, of course, we mentioned them as well. So right now, looking at the Big East League team play, the only team unbeaten in league play, Nemaha Central at 4-0, Silver Lake 4-1, Riley County 3-1, Holton 4-2, Sabetha, St. Mary's 3-2, Royal Valley 3-3, Hiawatha 1-3, Perry Lecompton 2-4, and Jeff West still winless in the first season of the Big East League overall for that. I want to quickly look at 2A, the districts and where certain teams are sitting. Currently, Riley County in District 3 is sitting in 4th place. Osage City is the champions of that district. Silver Lake is not going to come away with it. Even if Osage City loses next week, Silver Lake has lost the district because of that game. Council Grove currently tied with Riley County, but the point spread's not going to help Riley County even if they both win next week, and then St. Mary's is at the bottom. That's why those district games are so important, because when you look at the playoffs, it's going to be a very interesting battle. The top team is Caney Valley. They're sitting at the top spot in District 1. Humboldt sitting at the top in District 2, but they're tied with Central Heights. If you look at District 4, Nemaha Central's the champions of the district after they beat Sabetha, who's the runner-up. Garden Plain, the champion in District 5 for 2A. Southeast of Saline currently is leading in district play over in District 6, but Ellsworth's on their tail. If Southeast of Saline that loses next week and Ellsworth wins, Ellsworth beats them. Norton sits at the top in District 7 for 2A, and Hoisington sitting at the top in District 8. So we have a few champions right now. Some teams have claimed third already. Osage City, Nemaha Central, and Garden Plain, champions of their district, as they're sitting pretty comfortably going into the final week of the season. As for 6A, the top team in 6A East is Gardner Edgerton at 6-1. They're tied with Blue Valley West, but they have a slight point advantage over them, with Shawnee Mission Northwest coming in at third. Right now, the big thing for Manhattan next week, obviously the unbeaten season, but also hoping that Derby loses. Currently, Manhattan is the 2 seed. If the season ended today, they'd be the 2 seed in 6A West. Big reason why they were able to get that win over Wichita Northwest. When you beat Wichita Northwest, that's key, because Manhattan's got that advantage on them. But Derby, outside of Manhattan, is probably the best team right now. They beat Manhattan in the playoffs last year. There's a good chance that those two teams meet again in the postseason this year. Very good chance of that. So Manhattan High's hopes next week, obviously a win, but also hoping that Derby loses so they could get that top spot in 6A West. As I mentioned, Gardner Edgerton and Blue Valley West with the top 2 spots confirmed so far in 6A East. Over in 5A East, St. Thomas Aquinas has a 1-game lead over DeSoto, KC Washington, and Basel Linwood. Basel Linwood was unbeaten going into last night's games, but they lose. St. Thomas Aquinas still holds that top spot. Great Bend over on 5A, the western side of the 5A bracket. They lead Topeka Seaman, Godden Eisenhower, and Goddard by 1 game. 7-0. Great Bend has that top spot in district play in 5A East. We already mentioned 5A West. Lewisburg over in 4A East has that top spot at 7-0. Atchison is on their heels, though. They actually have a better average point spread, but they have the 1 loss, as I mentioned, in 4A East. As for 3A, District 1, Frontenac is the champion in 3A District 1. Prairie View, the champion in District 2 in 3A. Wellsville, champion in District 3. Topeka Hayden, champion in District 4. Rock Creek has won their district. Big thing to remember. Rock Creek has won their district. They're 3-0 in district play. They have the head-to-head over Marysville. That is key to remember. District 6 is big in 3A. Andale and Heston tied at 3-0 each. Possibly we could see a share of the district title. Who knows? Wichita Collegiate and Scott City have won their districts in Districts 7 and 8 for 3A play. When we come back, we've definitely spent a lot of time on this. We'll get you into the Twin Valley League and, again, look at those playoff matchups going into next week as we wrap up the show next year on Scoreboard Saturday. News Radio KMAN, brought to you by WTC Communications. Final segment of the program, Scoreboard Saturday News Radio, KMAN. AJ Shaw with you here on this Saturday morning. Of course, still not sure what time we'll be with you next week, with KU and K-State still yet to be determined on when that kick time will be. Speaking of K-State, Power Cat Game Day coverage gets you started at 2:30 this afternoon. Mitch Fortner, Tim Everson, and Mason both know Zach Nemechek. He's on vacation this week. Have you until about 4:30. Network coverage then starts. Then 6:30 kick from Morgantown, West Virginia, as K-State looks to go to 6-1 overall, 3-1 in conference play before the Sunflower Showdown next weekend against a KU team that's playing Houston today and needs a win. Of course, Kim Commando coming up in the next 10 minutes or so following the program today here on News Radio KMAN. Hopefully I didn't go too fast into those district standings, but really the one that you want to keep an eye on in the area is the 4A West standings. Also keep an eye on 6A West, with Derby and Manhattan being tied at the top spot. Definitely keep an eye on that when looking at where the playoff matchups are going to be. I don't expect a ton of change, but we will definitely keep an eye on that as we head into next week, when the playoff brackets will be released, probably early Saturday morning. We may get them a little bit before Friday night. It's pretty easy to determine. Keisha should have those rankings out pretty simply early. But there were a few last year. We had to wait till Saturday morning. I remember I was up pretty late that night waiting for them to come out. So hopefully they come out with ease this year. We don't have too many issues. Let's quickly get into TVL action before we look at the district rankings for that. Centralia, they defeated Troy last night by a 28-20 score. After dropping that game to the Missouri team, Mid-Buchanan, in Week 2, the Panthers and Roger Holtis' team has picked up 5 consecutive wins. 4-0 in district play, 3-0 in Twin Valley League play, and they sit in a pretty good position overall. Valley Heights, sitting at 2-1 overall in district play. League play. They've taken home a district title. Cody Trimble's team's won 6 consecutive games after that opening season loss to Centralia in Week 1. They take down Republic County by a score of 51-6 last night. Valley Heights, not much to play for now for the most part, as they sit with a win next week, would go to 7-1 for the season. The Buffaloes of Onega High School, They snap a 2-game skid last night with a 50-13 win over the Rams of Pleasant Ridge. McLouth is on their docket. Next is Ben Coulterman's team looking to finish with a 500 record overall at 4-4. Meanwhile, the Mustangs of Doniphan West have struggled. 5 straight losses for the Mustangs as John Polino's team losing to Riverside last night in a home tilt 40-8, and they have to play Horton next week to wrap up the regular season. 0-4 in district play, 0-3 in TVL play. Axtell Eagles, 46 consecutive victories for them. That leads everybody across the state. It's the longest winning streak in the state. Played a pretty good Hanover team last night, but the Wildcats were no match for the Eagles of Axtell High School. 58-12 your final and a big ball game with Frankfort next week. Nick Anderson's team will be on the docket for them. Speaking of the Wildcats at Frankfort High School, 6-1 on the season. They shut out Wakefield in a 60-0 contest last night. They moved to 6-1 on the season, 2-1 in district play, 2-1 in TVL play. That's going to be a big game next week, a good rivalry game between Axtell and Frankfort in that one. The Rams of Blue Valley Randolph High School, Quentin Craven's team, taking down Beloit St. John's Tipton in a 48-0 contest. They snap a 3-game losing streak as Quentin Craven's team still winless, though, in district play. They'll take on Wakefield in a home contest next week to wrap up their regular season. Hopefully we can talk to Coach maybe after that ball game. Clifton Clyde, the Eagles, sitting at 2-2 in league play, 5-2 overall. They've now won 5 straight after an 0-2 start. They're unbeaten in district play as well, 4-0. They take down Mankato Rock Hills by a 56-8 final. A road tilt with Lincoln to wrap up the regular season next week as Russ Steinbrock's team doing very well in district play. Washington County, on the other hand, things are not looking so great for them. They're 0-7. They lose a tough ball game on the road to Lakeside Downs, 38-32, but they battled for sure. It's been a rough season for Jason Ham's team, but they put up a good battle. Sylvan Lucas Unified is next on the docket for them. And finally, the Bulldogs of Lynn, who have not won a game in TVL play but are doing much better in district play. Well, they dropped their first contest in district play last night, losing a real tough ball game out at Osborne, 54-0. So right now, things not looking perfect, but a little bit better out in district play for the Lynn Bulldogs. I want to get into 8-man 1 and 2 district play really quickly before we wrap up the program this morning. In District 1, in 8-man 1, West Elk sitting at the top, Oswego at 2. Comes down to next week. Who will take the district title? Chase County and Madison tied in District 2. That is a huge thing to remember if you are a fan of a team out in District 2 in 8-man 1. That's going to come down to next week as well. El Saline and Central Plains deadlocked at the top. Lincoln and Clifton Clyde deadlocked at the top in District 4. South Central and Oxford deadlocked at the top in District 5. District 6, Kinsley's got a 1-game lead over Sublet and South Gray. Leoti Wichita County 4-0 over Ellis by 1 game, as well as Wakini Trago. They're up 1 game in District 7. And Hoxie, good friend of mine, a good friend of the show, or of the program, of listening to us. Hopefully I got that name right. I know I was screwing up a few weeks ago. Tied with Atwood, Rollins County at the top for District 8. Hoxie, one of the top teams in 8-man 1 in the media rankings over these last few weeks. Over in 8-man 2, Marmaton Valley sitting at 2-0. They have a 1-game lead over Colony Crest and Waverly. Waverly's a pretty good team. Played Axtell a few years ago and did not go great for them. Burlingame tied with Rural Vista in District 2 for 8-man 2. Axtell right now, they have the tiebreaker over Hanover by essentially half a game because Axtell has 3 wins as well. They beat Frankfort next week. Axtell's going to take home the district title. Can they make it 47 in a row? We'll see. Osborne, currently they have the lead in District 4 over Lynn, who sits at 3-1. That loss for Lynn was tough. They needed that one last night. Unfortunately, did not go their way, which is interesting because those are 2 pretty evenly matched teams. Both teams came in at 500. Hutchinson Central Christian, they are at the top in District 5 and 8-man 2. Victoria and Hodgman County tied in District 6 and 8-man 2 at 3-0 each. Buckland and Mineola, 3-0 each in District 7. Dighton leading Logan Palco in District 8 for that District 8 8-man 2 situation. So those are the district rankings. Again, playoff rankings come out next week when those games come to a conclusion. But, again, you kind of get a picture of where things are looking at. But definitely keep an eye on 6A West. Derby and Manhattan sitting at the top. Keep an eye on 4A West. You got 3 teams. Currently, Wamego holds that top spot. But, again, they can't worry about those other games. They got to worry about beating their opponent Abilene next week and putting themselves in a great position. Most of our show next week will be dedicated to the playoff rankings and where we're going to be certain teams playing the following week. Of course, Power Cat game day later today. That's a 2:30 with a 6:30 kickoff from West Virginia. So, again, make sure to keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the postseason rankings, and we'll definitely have you covered. Coming up tomorrow, of course, Chiefs football. They play San Francisco. The pregame is at 2. Kick is at around 3:25. Super Bowl rematch should be a fun game as San Francisco and Kansas City do battle. Chiefs looking to go to 6-0 on the season. First time since, I believe, 2003, if I'm not mistaken, that they'd be going to 6-0 on the season. If not, it would be 2018. I got to go back and look at that. But really appreciate everyone tuning in today. Of course, Kim Commando coming next. She'll have you covered during the can't even talk right now. She'll have you covered from 9 o'clock until noon today. So a lot of great things ahead for you coming up on K-Man. Again, really appreciate Mitch Fortner, Cole Dutchendorf, Troy Coverdale. Great coaches as well, Weston Moody, Joe Schartz, and Mark Henry for sitting down with us this week and providing their insight on the games. Of course, we will see you next week. Still don't have a time for you yet. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or 8 o'clock. It depends on when we'll be here. So stay tuned, of course, to News Radio KMAN for those details. Have a great weekend. Of course, enjoy some K-State football. Enjoy Chiefs football. And we'll see you next week on Scoreboard Saturday, brought to you by WTC Communications. WTC, keeping you connected with the fastest fiber network internet speeds. Get your home or business in the game online at WTCKS.com. That's WTCKS.com. Have a great weekend. Go Cats.